Welcome to this episode of the Boardroom Spotlight. Joining us today is a distinguished leader in Zambia's agricultural innovation space. He is the director of the Zambia Agriculture Research Institute based at the renowned Mount Makulu Central Research Station in Chilanga. With a wealth of experience in scientific research, policy engagement, and institutional leadership, Dr. Ndashe Kapulu plays a pivotal role in driving Zambia's agricultural transformation through innovation and evidence-based practices.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. My name is Ndashe Kapulu, born in the year 1981 on the 24th of December. So just a day before Christmas, I must mention. So I'm born and bred in Lusaka from a family of 8, 4 boys and 4 girls. My father was a politician, I must mention, and my mom a civil servant. So I guess the civil servant bit of me is taken from my mom. So basically I attended the University of Zambia and did a bachelor's in natural resources management. And then thereafter I transitioned to do my master's in sustainable agriculture and food security in the UK. And then later on I proceeded to do a PhD in agriculture, food security and nutrition security. So basically my journey in the ag sector, I must mention, this began from the time I was born, because around about 1980 thereabout, my parents decided to establish a farm somewhere in Mpongwe. And according to my mom, she had me at the time, when they were doing all the farm works, land clearing. So I guess that agricultural intuition comes from there. And I fondly have memories of my time during school holidays when we would visit my mom at the farm and would be playing and seeing what was going on. So I guess the agricultural aspect of me is deeply embedded in that childhood memory, and I can pretty much, I think, link my journey to my upbringing, because my parents, other than their former jobs, were vested in the ag sector. And then I transitioned, of course, due to my professional qualifications, and joined the government, specifically the Zambia Agriculture Research Institute, where I've risen through the ranks all the way up to my current position as director. So leaders, in my view, are made, they are not born, because what shapes one's leadership journey is the environment in which they've grown up in and the people they've interacted with. So I must say, part of my inspiration has been drawn, like I said, from my parents, because they've played a critical role, in my upbringing. Like I said, my father was a politician, and again, in my memory, I remember those times, would spend with him. I would observe, some of the times, I would be playing in his office and he's working. So basically, I think those are some of the things that have remained inscribed, in myself. Secondly, one of the core values that has driven me to this stage, or this stage in my life where I'm leading an institution, is servant leadership. I've learned, again, from observation, that where I'm coming from, I have been inspired by people who've been selfless in some of the leadership roles they've taken. Secondly, they've been people who've given themselves to the service of humanity. So I guess those two values, in my view, are the things that make me wake up every day in the morning, going to work, because I know at the back of my mind that I'm going to serve the people of Zambia. So basically, agriculture is what drives, food security, because all of us, I believe, we've had a meal this morning, unless you're fasting, and we can owe that to the farmer. And mainly it is the farmers, and predominantly in this part of the world, smallholder farmers, who feed, the masses. And one of the key things that makes me very passionate about agriculture is smallholder farmers in particular, because they produce food on small parcels of land to feed the masses, predominantly who live, in urban centers. So agriculture plays a critical role in national development because it contributes to jobs. So for example, in Zambia, nearly 70 or 80%, of the population depends on the ag sector, for their livelihood. So that is why agriculture is one of the critical, sectors, in any economy such as Zambia. ZARI, basically, I can sum up our mandate in 2 words. One, our role is to generate technologies that will help to improve agriculture productivity with a view of contributing to job creation, but also food security. The other component of ZARI's mandate, of course, is to conduct research in soils and crops, again linked to increased productivity. So everything in between and everything related to soils and crops is what ZARI focuses on. So our key focus is to develop technologies that will help to increase crop production or help to sustainably produce food without having any negative impacts on the environment. So ZARI works with a number of partners. So what I've not mentioned to you is that ZARI is a department within the Ministry of Agriculture. So being government, of course, we depend on government financing to conduct our research. But beyond that, because we are a specialized entity or a specialized department, we also collaborate with several partners. So local partners, academia, universities, NGOs. We partner with international funding bodies to whom we submit grant proposals, and if those proposals are compelling enough, we receive grant financing to be able to undertake research with a view of developing technologies that will help the farming community. So there are so many partners whom probably, the list is long for me to elaborate on and mention that we work with. Yeah. Oh yes, so what I did not mention at the beginning when I was giving an overview was, I joined ZARI in 2006 about, and one of the things that I remember, having joined, the institution is I envisioned myself, leading the institution, and I would always put myself in the shoes of the director. Say, if I was director, how would I, conduct business? If I was leading this institution, how would I want, ZARI to be poised or positioned with a view of making us be able to contribute better to our goals and more broadly to the broader national food security goals? So coming back to your question, what have we achieved, in the space that I have been at the helm of the institution? There are two things maybe that come to mind that I can point to. Number one, ZARI generates intellectual property. What I mean is, when we develop crop technologies, we develop what are called crop varieties. So these are varieties ranging from a wide array of crops such as maize, groundnuts, beans, and think of any crop that we currently grow in Zambia. ZARI, has either contributed to its breeding. So we've historically developed these crop varieties and have given them essentially for free to private sector. So one of the things that I can point to as a key milestone, under my watch or leadership is we managed to, get authority from government for us to be able to collect royalties on that intellectual property. So what I mean is when we breed these varieties, we are able now to commercialize them to private seed companies. And when private seed companies sell the seeds, government is able now to collect, royalties. on those, intellectual properties, or on those seed varieties. Secondly, for seed varieties where there's little or no interest by private sector to invest in because of their nature, again, we have been given authority, to be able to sell to the farming community for them to have access to clean planting material. That is very important in my view because it contributes to our broader goal, which is to increase agricultural productivity. The second thing is, when the institution, the time I was taking over from my predecessor, the institution, or more broadly, I think the ministry, was undergoing a process of restructuring to reposition ourselves, of course, as a ministry, to be able to offer effective service delivery, but also, align ourselves to the mandate of, for example, the current, government under which, we are serving, and the policies we are implementing. So I would pride myself as having led, the department to that through that restructuring exercise, where we had to think through the ZARI we envisage to have, in the future, and we've been able to restructure our functions, reposition, some of the units within ZARI, so that we are in a better placed position to offer, services to the farming community. Maybe the last thing that I can briefly maybe highlight to, although this again is up to the public to judge, is we've also been able to create a bit of some visibility, for ZARI, the services that we offer, some of the technologies that we develop, including some of the brilliant science, that is happening behind closed doors, which the public, might not be aware of. By nature, as scientists, we are very shy people, and we stick to our labs and our fields and, our experimental fields. But one of the key things that I think we've been able to do in the shortest period so far is to mainly create, visibility for some of the works that we are doing. All right, so there are two fronts that I can maybe refer to. One, on the crop side, like I said, our mandate is twofold: the crop development side and the soil management side. So let me start by the crop side. So I would say, in the last 5 years, ZARI has developed nearly 104 crop varieties, and these varieties are currently available, to the farming community. So if you think of any bean seed, so common bean, chances are that 9 out of 10 of those varieties on the Zambian market are developed by ZARI. If you think of groundnut, peanut varieties, chances are that 9 out of 10 of those peanut varieties could have been developed by ZARI. Of course, maize, the market share is shared with private sector, but even there, I think we've contributed. Now, some of the things that we are working on, of course, are the ongoing variety development, programs where we are breeding crop varieties, particularly in response to climate change. Because with climate change, as you might be aware, last year we suffered a terrible drought. So drought has a terrible effect on crop yields. So one of the things ZARI is currently working on is developing varieties that are drought tolerant for a wide range of crops. The other thing that we are currently working on, so last year the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, launched a crop diversification program. So in response to that, ZARI is working on a number of crops to increase the basket of options that farmers, are exposed to. The other thing that ZARI is working on is, ZARI is a National Plant Genetic Resource Center. So what I mean there is, at ZARI we collect, characterize, and conserve genetic resources for food and agriculture. So think of any edible crop species in Zambia. we have collected these and we are keeping them at ZARI. So our current seed collection is well over 6,000 crop species. We have live collections that run in the hundreds of different, vegetatively propagated seed types of plants. The other thing we are working on is we also have a robust fruit tree, program that is multiplying or vegetatively propagating citrus trees, things like avocado. I know currently in Zambia, when you talk of avocado, everyone is talking about the Hass avocado. So we at ZARI, have been multiplying or grafting, these avocado plants and making them available, to the farming community. So on the plant side, those are some of the brilliant things we are doing, other than the other things we are doing to try and protect, our crops from pests. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we released 3 4-armyworm tolerant varieties. So 4-armyworm is a notorious pest, that attacks maize. So in response, ZARI bred and released, 3 maize varieties that are tolerant, to this particular pest. And by extension, farmers do not need to use excessive pesticides, to control these pests in maize, because the maize will be tolerant, to this particular pest. Another thing that I can talk about, which is noteworthy and, is of particular importance, is currently as a country, we have what we call the 10-1-1. So the drive of the current government through the Ministry of Agriculture is to produce 10 million metric tons of maize by 2027, 1 million metric tons of wheat by 2027, and 1 million metric tons of soy by 2027. So in response to that, of course, we are developing elite maize varieties that are high yielding, drought tolerant, are very efficient in terms of nutrients. We've also released 2 rain-fed wheat varieties. Traditionally, we know that wheat can only be produced, under irrigated conditions. Under rain-fed conditions, it's problematic because of disease pressure. But our scientists, developed, these 2 varieties that are tolerant, to wheat diseases, that are very prevalent, in the rainy season. And for the soybean side, of course, we've developed a number of agronomic packages, that underpin increased soybean productivity. On the soil side, in brief, again, as a country, we've embarked on a program to map the entire country in terms of the soil fertility status. Why this is important: it will help underpin decision making at various levels. At a policy level, historically, Zambia has been using blanket fertilizer recommendations for crop production. That has its own negative effects on productivity. And so by mapping our soils, we'll be able to generate enough soil information that will help us formulate site-specific or even regional-specific, fertilizer recommendations, which will contribute, to increased crop productivity, or in this case, maize productivity. The second reason why mapping our soils is very important is we've noticed over the years, with the continued use of chemical fertilizers, our soils are becoming more acidic. In certain areas, they are becoming more degraded. So by mapping these soils, we'll be able to get very good soil health information that will make us generate appropriate, soil management practices, which our farmers can use to sustainably, help them produce food. Because Zambia, as you might be aware, is poised, to be a food basket, not only, for our own country, but even in the region, feeding into neighboring countries like the Congo, Zimbabwe and a few other countries that depend on, our ag commodities for their own food needs. So those are some of the things that I can talk about, that we are currently working on as a department, developing these technologies that will contribute, to increased productivity. And with increased productivity, we will eat whatever we can eat. The surplus will be used for trade. And with trade, once we tap into export markets, we begin to earn the much needed, forex. And by implication, we can then also diversify our economy, away from traditional, economic programs such as mining. Thank you very much. Farmers play a very important role in our research agenda in the sense that the indigenous knowledge that they possess is very important to inform our research. So yes, we do work on farm when we are developing our technologies. So for example, when a researcher, has developed a crop variety, part of the development process involves them going to farmers and asking farmers if those crop varieties, meet some of their needs. I'll give you a practical example of where this has worked particularly well. So previously, sorghum, the varieties that we had were very tall. And this made it very difficult, for farmers to, work their fields and even harvest. So our researchers, working in collaboration with farmers, having gotten feedback, have managed to reduce, the height of the sorghum. The second classical example I can give is in finger millet. So finger millet is a crop that is grown predominantly in the northern parts of the country. Historically, the finger millet varieties that were available in the area were very short and dwarfed millets. But our researchers, having gotten feedback from smallholder farmers through the participatory variety, development process, were able to breed millet varieties that were slightly taller to make it easy so that farmers do not have to stoop down and bend, to break their backs, when harvesting these millets. So these are the two examples I can give of the role that farmers play in our research, process. But another aspect is, in our interaction with farmers, we also come up with research questions which, inform our research programs, because then we cannot, conduct our research in a vacuum. Our research questions need to be aligned to the farmer needs. So yes, to respond to your question, we do have a direct interaction with farmers through our research programs that are designed in such a way that we do what we call as adaptive research. So when we develop these technologies, we take them on farm, we try them out with the farmers, we get feedback from the farmers, we come back, make changes, take them back again. So it's an iterative process. So it's quite a dynamic and fluid, environment with which we operate. That is one pathway. The other pathway is, of course, through the traditional extension system. Like I mentioned, ZARI is a department within the ministry, and within the Ministry of Agriculture, we have a Department of Extension and Advisory Services. So when we develop technologies, we pass these technologies in form of either information packages, to our colleagues in the Department of Extension, who then go out to farmers and train, these farmers on how to grow crops or how to work their land or how to even do stuff. The other pathway that we have used, and which is linked to one of the achievements I talked about earlier on the visibility side, is we do on a yearly basis conduct what we call field days. These are open days that we have on a yearly basis across the country, I must mention. So ZARI is present in 9 out of the 10 provinces. So in each of these, our research stations, we do have these open and field days where we expose farmers to the different technologies and the services that we offer as a research community. So those are some of the pathways. The last pathway, of course, is through private sector. Again, we make available our technologies to private sector. For example, the seed varieties, we pass them on to, private seed companies who then, popularize these among smallholder farmers. So those are some of the avenues through which, we are working with smallholder farmers for the common good of the agriculture sector in the country. All right. I could answer that question in two parts. Number one, research is expensive. It's expensive in the sense that it is an investment in the future. You will not realize your returns from research in 1 or even 2 years. It's a long-term investment. I'll give you a practical example. The 2 wheat varieties that we released in 2023, thereabout, we started working on them in 2012. So that's a long time, and that's a lot of money, to invest, to come and realize, the output roughly after 10 or so years. On average, using conventional breeding techniques, it takes 7 to 10 years to develop one variety. Again, that's a long time. But as you know, research is evolving with time, and as time goes, more new novel techniques are emerging, that are reducing the turnaround time. So one of the key challenges that I would say that research in this part of the world, in the global south, so in the developing country side, of the world, is funding to research. The funding is quite scarce because, like I said, research is very expensive. It is an investment in the future. The second bit is it takes time to develop a researcher. So, as I've told you, I joined the department in 2006, and it's taken me slightly just under 20 years. I must say I'm the youngest ever, director to have, ascended in such a short space, to this institution. It takes a long time to train a researcher, because research, in my view, is a practice. So the more you practice, the better you become at it. It's like wine. The older wine gets, the more mature it becomes, and the more, richer it becomes. And that's the same thing with research. So science and technology, is an area that, within, this side of the world still requires a bit of some investment. So we need to turn around, the time and reduce the time it takes to churn out graduates who are highly skilled, and are equipped with the right tools to be able to undertake some novel and groundbreaking research. Equipment is another thing. And this is linked to the first part, because some of the stuff that we work on requires specialized, sophisticated equipment, which doesn't come cheap. And, with constrained budgets and other competing needs, it by implication and extension, it means there are some things that we could want to do, but we cannot do because funds maybe are not allowing. Yeah, so those are some of the things I would mention as key bottlenecks to research. Yeah. Yes, I think I consider myself a bit youthful, although not anymore, I guess, because I'm by the United Nations Convention, of course, I'm past that age, but I'm quite youthful. So if youths are looking for any inspiration, I think they have it. A young man who's risen through the ranks, in a short space, and in the area of science and technology, and they are leading arguably the largest agriculture research institution in the country. So yes, there's quite a lot that youths, can do in the science space. We are moving slowly away from the conventional, traditional way of doing things. We've transitioned into the digital space. there's an opportunity there for the young, to exploit the digital space, to be a bit innovative. We can rely on that energy of wanting to get things done, in a smart way, wanting to get things done, without one breaking their back. We need to, incentivize the ag sector by incorporating the young, because traditionally I think people view agriculture as, a retirement job. But I beg to differ, because within the ag sector, I think there's quite a lot. So ICT, agribusiness solutions. The world has become interconnected in the sense that, a commodity can be produced in one part of the world, but traded in a different part of the world, because the Internet of Things, makes us now connected. And so those are some of the smart spaces that the young, can take advantage of. E-commerce, e-marketing, trading in ag commodities, using digital platforms. Those are some of the areas, the young can take advantage of. Our training institutions also, offer a very good opportunity for young, innovative minds, to co-create, technologies, co-innovate solutions that are affecting, the ag sector. Now we are even using drones, to manage pests and diseases in fields. We are using remote sensing, to help us, make decisions in so far as either fertilization is concerned. We are using in other parts of the world, they've transitioned to using even unmanned tractors, to produce food. So all those things are things, that young minds, can tap into. And now the elephant in the room is artificial intelligence. You can use AI. I have an application on my phone, and we've been trying this out with our colleagues, at ZARI, where we went out, in the northern parts of Zambia and Luapula, where there was a problem of cassava brown streak disease. We employed young, people who were going from village to village and diagnosing, diseases in cassava and offering advisory services to farmers. So all those are spaces that are replete and can be exploited by, the young. They can invest in agribusiness advisory services. They can invest in agro, trading and everything in between within, the ag sector is ready to be exploited by young minds from a commercial perspective or a trading point of view. That's how I look at it.
Great. Finally, where do you see ZARI in the next 10 years?
Brilliant question. A leading institution, that will contribute not only to Zambia, but to the region. Like I said, the world is becoming smaller in the sense that you no longer need to, just develop a technology that will be restricted to Zambia. You'll be shocked to learn that some of the varieties that we've developed as a country have found their way even into the EU. So I see ZARI in the next 10 years as a leading scientific institution in the area of crops and research in Zambia, where we will develop novel technologies, in response to climate change, in response to the population growth. Yeah, so an institution that will, guide policy, an institution that will inform policy, an institution that will underpin national development in the area of crop production. I want us to develop crop varieties, that will, give yields of up to 18 or so tons for maize, because that's what they are getting in the Americas. So if we can, as ZARI, contribute to that narrative, where as a country we move from the current 2.7 metric tons, per hectare yield of maize, to even 10, 12, even 15, metric tons per hectare at smallholder level, courtesy of ZARI, through some of the technologies that we have developed, I think I'll be a very happy man. Two, an environment where innovation, will thrive. Young minds can finally be attracted, to come and work at ZARI. You'll be happy to note that ZARI is actually contributing to a number of seed companies out there, because scientists join ZARI and eventually transition and become, employed in private seed companies. So for me, I want to see a ZARI where we are able to retain some of the best minds, that the country, will ever produce in the area of agricultural research, being retained, at ZARI, and them, priding, in their trade and developing technologies, developing innovations, that will underpin national development. Like I said, I will retire a happy guy, if we were to achieve that in the next 10 years. And I feel we are on the right trajectory, and we are doing the necessary things to get us to that goal. Yes, several of them, but the one that probably is more impactful on my life is the late President Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. Like I said, my father was a politician and served under the Kenneth Kaunda regime. Why Dr. Kaunda is very inspiring to me is, I remember one time we were on the tarmac at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, and I think the president was traveling. And so that morning, I think my father was running, late, and he took me along. And I'll never forget. So the president, as you know, his flagship, greeting was to put his handkerchief on your forehead, and he said some inspiring words to me, which I have never forgotten. Why Kaunda inspires me is he presided over, a regime of people who were not of a very, noteworthy educational background, but I think they achieved a lot of good things on which I think we are building on as a country. He was selfless, and because of that, I think he is an inspiration to me. So servant leadership, like I said when I started this, talk, is one of the things that makes me wake up early in the morning, and I see that in Dr. Kenneth Kaunda. He was a servant leader.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Boardroom Spotlight. We hope our chat with Dr. Ndashe Kapulu was informative and educative. Keep checking back for more episodes. Till next time.